Hello there, welcome back to a brand new video. Today I'm going to be talking about a franchise that has become one of the most controversial book-to-screen adaptations of recent times, The Hobbit. By the way, these are just my opinions. Enjoy! The book The Hobbit was first written by J.R.R. Tolkien in 1937 and was the introduction to his fantasy world of Middle-earth. We got to meet characters such as Bilbo Baggins, the beloved Hobbit, Gandalf the Grey, and Gollum, who is one of the most iconic characters in fiction, introduced in only Chapter 5. Its sequel, The Lord of the Rings, published in the mid-1950s, was a huge success for sales. When director Peter Jackson decided to make a movie adaptation of the beloved trilogy in the early 2000s, it was a major goldmine. The Lord of the Rings movies came out around the same time as the first two Harry Potter movies hit theatres, and they both made a lot of money. And in 2003, the epic finale Return of the King won 11 Oscars. It made people very excited to see The Hobbit, as Peter Jackson was also going to be directing that trilogy, and after the brilliance that was the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it looked like it was going to be great. He also had Martin Freeman coming in as Bilbo Baggins, Ian McKellen returning as Gandalf, as well as Andy Serkis coming back as Gollum. He also had Cate Blanchett as Galadriel returning from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Later on, you had Orlando Bloom returning as Legolas, Evangeline Lilly as Tauriel, who would go on to be the Wasp from the Ant-Man films, and even Benedict Cumberbatch was going to voice Smaug the Dragon. This made audiences who fell in love with the Lord of the Rings trilogy very excited and keen to see The Hobbit. I'd also like to clarify that I read the Hobbit book before I watched the movies, so I could make my own judgment. I heard terrible reviews and opinions on the movies, so I wanted to read the book first, and it turns out I really liked the book, but I'm not in favour of the movie adaptations. But to start with some positives, I think that Martin Freeman was perfect as Bilbo Baggins. A lot of the cast was good, as we got many actors and actresses returning from the original trilogy, as I mentioned earlier. I'm also pleased that these films have helped me learn more about how not to adapt a book. Well, that's a positive. Though the CGI was not perfect, I did like how they did the scene with Gollum from the chapter Riddles in the Dark. However, even from the first few shots of the first movie in the trilogy, you can tell it was made a lot different from The Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit was made more digitally, using new technology which made the locations and iconic places such as Bag End look like a video game graphic from the 2000s. In The Lord of the Rings, this was in fact a set built in New Zealand. However, in The Hobbit, it doesn't look so genuine. For me, the worst thing about The Hobbit is the CGI. I think it looks terrible considering it was made 10 years after the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. Then, the scene where the dwarves are having dinner at Bag End, it just got even worse for me. Especially the scene with the song, That's What Bilbo Baggins Hates. Though this was in the book, it irritated me most when the dwarves helped cleaned up the mess and tossed plates to each other. I'm very much aware that the Hobbit book was written with a younger audience in mind, but this scene of the film felt childish and annoyed me. I can sort of understand that this scene is supposed to create the life and happiness of living in the Shire, and gradually as the films progress, the characters go through more trauma and more pain. Another problem I had with the franchise was that the production team decided that they would take this relatively average-sized book, about the same size as The Hunger Games, not too short but not too long, and turn it into a 3-movie trilogy. This meant that per movie there was not much source material to work off, with the first movie focusing on the first 7 chapters, the second focused on chapters 7 through 12, and the finale used the final 7 chapters. This meant each movie had only a handful of source material for 2.5-hour movies each. This meant all the movies felt padded out and without a clear pace, with lots of added scenes and even characters. That brings me on to my next point, added characters that were not in the book. Though there are probably more, 3 come to mind instantly for me. Firstly, Legolas, an important character from the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, appeared in The Desolation of Smaug, the second film in the Hobbit trilogy. This one I didn't mind so much, though he was not in the book. It tied nicely to the original Lord of the Rings as the son of Thranduil, who was portrayed by Lee Pace from Twilight. He was a big character in the novel. My main problem is that because Orlando Bloom had aged since last playing the character, the production team needed to make it appear as if he hadn't aged at all. This led to using heavy CGI, which made him look very different, as well as giving him unnaturally blue contacts to wear. He also had a very different personality, which made people dislike this interpretation of a beloved character from the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. Another character that was not even in any book written by J.R.R. Tolkien was Tauriel, a woodland elf of Mirkwood created for the movie by Peter Jackson. According to Google, the reason why she was created for the movie was because of a lack of female characters. Evangeline Lilly, who as I mentioned before would go on to have a star role in the Ant-Man films, portrayed Tauriel well, despite the fact that she was not in the book. I liked that they had her as a love interest for Keeley, played by Philip Lombard himself, Aidan Turner. I liked this small relationship that was added. It was quite sweet. It made it even sadder too when Keeley died, though those who had read the book would have seen this coming. People who had only watched the films may have been in a shock at this. This brings me on to the added character that annoyed me more than anyone else, Alfred. So firstly, Alfred was a resident of Lake Town who was in most scenes alongside Luke Evans as Bard the Bowman. Again, Alfred was not in the book, and he proved himself to be the most irritating character in the franchise. In one scene in the Battle of the Five Armies, which has already become known for being shockingly bad, this character is too scared to fight with the men in battle that he dresses up in maiden clothes to try and fit with the other hidden women and children. It is stated on Google that this character was added for some comic relief, but it proves to be nothing more than irritating for the viewer. Finally, I just mentioned that the finale of the trilogy, The Battle of Five Armies, was known for being shockingly bad. So bad, in fact, that I never want to watch it again. Some positives came out of it for me, teaching me new things about films and how not to adapt a book to a film. I have other complaints for the franchise, but I think that's enough for one day. But I'm very happy that I've seen the franchise and have an opinion on it. As usual, subscribe for more, and you can follow me on TikTok. I've put my account names in the description below. Thanks for watching. Bye.